We're back on 88.7 KWDM The Point. I'm Ian Nelson alongside Johnny Reynolds and Cole Sunderman for another great fourth episode of Before the Buzzer, coming on a Wednesday, kind of the new norm, but just the way this schedule has worked out for our school year. It's going to be another great show. We're gearing up, getting ready for March, which means basketball is heating up. We got high school hoops, some college hoops. We're going to start it off with the high school hoops. Johnny, kick it off.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of, buzz. The sub-state has came out and kind of seeing where every team is, and teams are wrapping up their, conference play on Friday, and obviously Valley had a game for the guys at least on Saturday, which an unfortunate loss to Northwest. But at least for the Valley Tiger boys, there's been a bit of a bright side. In the last couple of weeks, they beat Cedar Rapids Washington by 18. They kept it really close with Waukee leading at halftime and throughout a little bit of the third quarter, but just fell so short. Waukee's great at closing out games, and then you could kind of tell they were very tired on Saturday, losing to Northwest 47-76. But there is some hope for the Valley Tigers as they will play Roosevelt, capping off the regular season play, and on Monday taking the road to Iowa City West.
Well, yeah, and I mean this team really has felt like it's turned a corner. The Waukee Northwest game, that's kind of what you expect. But also, you expected a score similar to that against Waukee. And in that game, that kind of in most of the first half, they outplayed Waukee. And Waukee was just able to out-talent them. They have more talent, Waukee does, but Valley really played with so much energy and heart. And that's what's kept them in a lot of these games, sticking around with teams like Waukee and Council Bluffs Lincoln, who they were up by 10 after the first quarter, ended up squandering that lead and falling by 14 in that game. But they've really hung with some really good teams, and I'm really interested to see how this Roosevelt game goes, because Roosevelt sitting at 16-5, and obviously the Tigers at 1-19. You look at the record, and it doesn't look like it's going to go too well. But man, Valley does really have a chance to pull one off, because Roosevelt has looked a little shaky at times as this year has wound down. So I'm really looking forward to that game.
Yeah, and we're gonna stream that one on 88.7, so that will be a great one. Roosevelt took a big loss last night, 70-36 against the Wolves. A kind of a big team that came into the picture was them, and they've had some great games, and they've beaten Roosevelt by 20, but they've lost to teams like Prairie, and they've had a couple of shaky games. But I think if Valley, could win that, obviously that's what they want to do, finishing off regular season play, but also just building confidence, seeing what is working well, seeing what role players are working correctly, because really Monday heading to City West is not going to be an easy game, and that's the game you're putting all your energy into.
That it is. Moving on to the girls' side. The Valley girls have finished off their regular season play. They played Carlisle at home and took a win only by one, but hey, a win's a win. That was coming off of two straight losses to Johnston and Waukee, both coming at home. The girls Tigers, they will play their first regional game of the postseason in the regional semifinals after getting the bye. They play the winner of Council Bluffs Jefferson or Southeast Polk. The predicted winner is Southeast Polk, so it could be a rematch to what has happened already this season. Valley has won both games against Southeast Polk. If it does end up, Council Bluffs Jefferson has had a little bit of a rough season, only winning 2 games on the year, kind of looking like the Valley boys on that side. It's just not been a good one. We will be live here for that one on Saturday. It's at 7 o'clock. The game's here at Valley High School. We will be live on 88.7 KWDM.
Yeah, backing up for the girls' game, what we streamed on Friday, the 13th, against the Waukee Warriors, that one was a bit interesting. A game that Valley wanted to have, and you could tell there's a lot of frustration going on. A team you beat by 18 back in early January at Waukee is a game you expect to win, and it's kind of almost deja vu, like we were saying on the stream, to that Centennial game. That's a game you expected to win. You know you're a better team, but it's the mistakes and not playing at your best got the best of them, and it really proved. I mean, it was an overtime game, but Waukee played the better second half and played better in overtime.
Yeah, and for the Tigers, you mentioned that frustration. That was really evident, especially in their shot making. They only shot 28%, which is completely uncharacteristic for this team. Players like Tylee White, who shot 30%, or Olivia Adams, who only went 1 for 6. Like, these are players that are usually hitting shots, and Tylee White hit that shot, if you remember, to send it to overtime. But really, other than that, she really struggled, and the Tigers really have to get back up on their 3-point shooting, because that's what they live on, and if they aren't able to hit shots, they are going to lose some games. And when it's win or go home down the stretch here, that you really can't afford to have a game like this.
Yeah, and especially, now you got that Carlisle game under your belt. It was a nice win for the Tigers. Went down to the wire against a good Carlisle team, but you can't play sloppy against Southeast Polk. They're gonna want to get everything they got. You got to get through them first. You got to focus on that game, and then you're gonna go into a game. If you win that at home against an Iowa City High team that's been pretty consistent all year, as well as Ames, and those teams are pretty even to that Waukee and Ankeny Centennial game. So those are games that you got to fully lock in. You can't make mistakes. You got to play your full offense, because it seems like for the girls, when they're in those situations where they're the favorite, they kind of they feel the pressure. But when they play teams like Northwest, obviously excluding the Dowling game, but they've hung with Northwest. They lost by 1, and they actually beat them at home back in December. So these girls have proved that they could pretty much compete with anybody. They just have to be on.
Yeah, and you mentioned like how they have to be on, and they really haven't been on, but they were able to still pick up a victory like this victory against Carlisle, where you don't shoot the ball well at all from long range at 25%, but you're still able to beat a really good Carlisle team. And after that Waukee game, it really felt like the Tigers were going to go down in this Carlisle game, but this is just a really impressive victory, and Carlisle's incredible. They don't let Carlisle being in a lower level, don't let that fool you. They are one of the best teams in the state, and Valley being able to pick up that win is just huge for confidence and huge going forward.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting just to see how this can pan out, because they have a path where it's going to be, pretty easy to win, against Southeast Polk. Then you got to get through one more. It's just about staying composed and really getting through that last game against, it's going to be Ames or Iowa City. You get through that game, you don't really know exactly where you're going to be, but I believe this Valley team could really compete with anyone, and anything could happen. I mean, these girls could, not make state, and they could be a semifinalist or even make it to the finals based on how their season has gone. So it's just going to take some coaching ability and the players wanting it, because they have the talent, they have the team, they have the height. But it's going to be interesting to see, and we'll be there for it.
Yeah, and it doesn't even feel like they're playing that well right now, but just being able to pick up some wins, especially against teams that they're definitely better than, it can be huge, because for a lot of these shooters, it feels like if they see one go through the basket, they're going to rattle off 4 straight. So it's going to be really interesting to see who's going to be able to take over, because we've seen players like Tylee White or Carrie Rose really try to assert themselves, but they haven't been able to do it consistently. So if somebody is able to step up and do it consistently, then that can take the Tigers to a whole nother level.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game. Just a reminder, we will be live for that game this Saturday starting at 7 o'clock. Moving on now to college hoops. We got to recap quite a few big games that happened over the weekend. Johnny, you're looking antsy. What stood out to you this early of the week?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much that we're going to try and cover today, and we might not get through all of it. But first, we want to quickly just go over the UNI Panthers. We've talked about them so much throughout the start of the show this semester, and they continue to improve. 9-7 in conference play. They're building. They jumped Valparaiso, so they're moving up. They had a really big game against the Bulldogs, winning 86-62 on Sunday. They played tonight against Indiana State. Not like a bit of a trap game, just of how well they've been playing. So they got to go into that one feeling confident. But this Panther team, they're really impressing me, and they're proving that they could pretty much hang with anybody in the Missouri Valley.
And it also does feel like Drake and UNI are two teams that are kind of going in opposite directions right now. Drake being on a 6-game losing streak, and UNI really after their long losing streak, they've been able to win 4 out of their last 5, including that win over Drake, which was really they won that game handily. So Drake, they have some issues right now, and in Coach Hendo's first year, you can't really expect for them to be back up to that level that they were. But this is a loss for the Bulldogs that really does hurt, because in a rivalry game you don't expect to get blown out, and that's what happened. And UNI has really improved in this late stretch of the year.
Yeah, for the Panthers, it's just about doing what you can, because they're getting a nice close to the end of the year. Obviously, with that Indiana State game, and then you do play Drake at the end of the year, which can kind of be interesting how that goes. A lot of heat, a lot of blood going into that game. But you have Southern Illinois and Illinois State before then. You could really see these Panthers win those next 4 just based off how they've been playing. They kept it really close with Belmont. I think this is a team, no doubt they have a shot at the Missouri Valley title. I don't care that they're a 6 seed just on how the conference has been this year. On the other hand, the Bulldogs, they got to figure some things out. Like you said, Cole, with the new coach, it's a whole new situation, but you can't give up. You still have games to play, and you got to keep your head up, because these next 3 games are not going to be any easier, and you got to keep battling.
Speaking of new coaches, the Iowa Hawkeyes come in, Ben McCollum with a whole new program in Iowa City. On Saturday, they stayed at home and playing the number 13 Boilermakers of Purdue. They take a pretty big loss in that one, 78-57. Braden Smith really played outstanding, just passing the ball around, getting the rebounds. Bennett Sturtz still with 19, played a very strong game, but the Hawkeyes just couldn't handle the steam from the Boilermakers in that one. And then Iowa trying to redo what they kind of struggled with. They were at home again last night against Nebraska, the number 9 Cornhuskers, who have kind of taken a little bit of a slide since their first loss, which has now turned into 4 after a big loss to Iowa. Iowa, the upset at home, 57-52. Bennett Sturtz with almost half of the Hawkeyes' points with 25. The Hawkeyes look strong in this one, mainly coming from the defense. Their defense is what took them. They just kept the ball out of the rim for the Cornhuskers, and they were able to turn that into points.
Yeah, a huge win for Iowa. Bennett Sturtz continuing to put it all out on the court, and he showed it. And Nebraska hung on really tough in that game, but the Hawkeyes were prepared. They've had a couple tough losses to Maryland, and then obviously that Purdue game on Sunday, and they were ready for it. And their schedule is not going to get any easier, but I think this really solidifies yourself. You get 19 wins, you're 19-7, pick up a couple more games, and I'm sure that they'll win at least a Big Ten tournament game. You never know in those games, but this team looks like they're tournament bound for sure.
Well, yeah, and it does feel like this Nebraska game was really what the Hawkeyes needed to really solidify their spot, because they obviously have those 2 lighter games with Penn State and Ohio State. But other than that, they really have a really tough schedule, and it kind of felt like going into these last 6 games of the year, you had to get obviously those 2, and then you had to get one of the 4 with Nebraska, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then at Nebraska. So this is just a huge win to really solidify their spot, because now there's really no question in my mind that the Hawkeyes are making the tournament, and it's really just a credit to Ben McCollum, because they really are not that talented of a team. Obviously you have Bennett Sturtz, but outside of him, what do you have? Like, there's not really many guys other than that alpha Bennett Sturt. So, Ben McCollum has put together such a great team, and without him, the Hawkeyes would not be in this position.
Yeah, they're gonna keep it going. Hopefully, they have a big game on Sunday against the Wisconsin Badgers, and we know, watching the Badgers the past couple of weeks, they've been on fire, and they're a huge Big Ten team to look out for. They beat number 10 Illinois and Michigan State, although did lose to Ohio State. So that's just how interesting the Big Ten really has been this year. And you look into the tournament games in Indianapolis, it's really anyone's. I mean, obviously Purdue and Michigan would be the favorites, but there's so many teams competing for that spot, and the Big Ten is always so shaky every year.
Yeah, and what's really interesting with Wisconsin, like, they really have been such a confusing team because they're losing to teams like USC, who they might make the tournament, but it's not looking great for them. And then they lose at Indiana, and then they turn around and win at Illinois, and then beat Michigan State handily, and then they lose to Ohio State. Like, that's just how fun this league has been, and you really don't know which version of Wisconsin you're going to get. If you get the Ohio State version of Wisconsin, Iowa could really win this game. But if Wisconsin plays to the best of their abilities, this is really gonna be one of those knockdown and just body blow after body blow. This one's really gonna be a boxing match, and whichever defense can hold up in this game. It feels like it's kind of the Iowa defense versus the Wisconsin offense, and whichever one can assert itself is gonna win this game.
Yeah, that one's 3:00 Sunday afternoon. Iowa taking on the Wisconsin Badgers at Wisconsin. That one's going to be a good one. Moving on to the last team in the state that we have not talked about, the Iowa State Cyclones, with 2 huge wins over the weekend and big Monday stretch. They started off their stretch, both games coming at home. This one was a rematch for the Centuries. Iowa State taking on the number 9 Kansas Jayhawks. This was a rematch from early in the year when Iowa State walked into the fog and got beat handedly by the Jayhawks. Iowa State with some bad taste in their mouth, taking on the Jayhawks at home and just put pedal to the metal. Milan Momcilovic out shooting everybody, holding the Jayhawks to 56 points, the lowest the Jayhawks have been at this entire year. 74-56 was the score in that one. Iowa State just looking so strong as of late, and it's coming at the best times right now. We'll see how it goes. And really the test was Monday night, where they took on Houston, another game of the year for this college basketball season, and Iowa State winning it big at home, 70-67. The number 2 Houston Cougars falling, and it was to no shortness of anything from Houston. Kingston Fleming, 22 points. Emmanuel Sharp had over double digits. He fouled out in the last 2 minutes of the game. Houston battled to the end, but Iowa State just outplayed them. They took the 3-point lead at halftime, and they held it. Both teams scoring 27 in the second half. It was Iowa State, though, who going in with the halftime lead was able to pull it out at the end.
Well, and this Houston game, this was an example of Hilton magic, and there were a lot of national guys that were talking about this Iowa State-Kansas game, like, oh, Hilton magic really came through. No, this Houston game, this was Hilton magic. The Cyclones, they got down by 10 with 7 minutes to go, and they looked like they were going to get beat by Houston. And Houston, they played really well, and especially in that first half. That first half was Final Four level basketball, and then the crowd gets into it, and then Bateman he only had 6 points in this game, but it felt like he had way more. He made such an impact on this game, and that's really what it came down to. Who was making big shots at the very end of the game, and it ended up being guys like Bateman and Heisey, guys that really, they've had some great games, but they've also had some completely silent games, and it was really nice to see without the big three with Lipsy, Jefferson, and Momcilovic, none of them really, not that they didn't show out, but they didn't have one of those vintage games. So having one of those role players really step up was really impressive to me.
Yeah, moving on, just taking a quick look back at the Kansas thing, I think one of the key things in that one and why, the Hilton Magic, I think this team, they got beat by 20 earlier in the year. You want to kind of get back, and they did that, but there were reasons behind that, and I think one of the key reasons is Iowa State just absolutely shut down Darren Peterson, held him to 10 points, something that no team has done yet this season, even when Kansas has lost. Darren Peterson has still gone off. And Darren Peterson is one of those players in the Big 12 that since the start of the season has been in the talks of winning Big 12 Player of the Year, first team All Big 12, potentially in the running for the Player of the Year just for college basketball, or will be in the next coming years. And Iowa State held him to 10, 3 for 10 on shooting, 2 for 6 on 3 points, was pretty much just non-existent in that game. And I think that's one of the key reasons why Iowa State is so good. And they mentioned it in the Houston-Iowa State game. You have the second best and the first best defense in the country playing head-on-head on a random Monday night in February, and it was one of the best games all year. Yes, I'm slightly biased as an Iowa State fan, but I watched the entire game start to finish, and man, was I impressed with both of these teams. Yes, you can sit here, talk about Iowa State as much as you want here in Iowa, but you got to give credit where credit's due, and that's Houston. Houston is such a good team. They're a 2 seed for a reason. Chris Sanak was playing very well, especially in that paint area. He is one of the very good guys. Kingston Fleming, we mentioned, 22 points. What a great guy. Manuel Sharp, 16 points. Isaiah Harwell, who was pretty good at getting those blocks in there when they needed big-time blocks. This is a really good game, and you mentioned, Final Four play in not even the first half. In that second half, when it was tighter, both teams scoring under 30 in that second half. The defenses were starting to shine, and I really liked at the end of the game, Kelvin Sampson was saying really that you can say all you want about this. We played our game, and it's just Iowa State got out. That's what happened here. Both teams played their game, and it was just the early shot making that kind of helped the Cyclones, and that is what we've been talking about all year. Once Iowa State can come out hot, not get quiet, that is where they can play very well. They got out hot in this one, and despite the 10-point deficit late in the second half, the Cyclones win it.
Yeah, Iowa State just so dominant in both of those games. Obviously against Houston, it was a bit of a flip a coin game till the end, but just the talent that they bring and how dedicated those guys are is, true Final Four contender. And those 2 wins are huge, especially off last week's loss to TCU. It's a huge bounce back, and you hope to just keep looking forward. You got a big game this weekend against BYU, and you never really know what could happen in that game late in Utah. But the Cyclones, improve now. They're 15-0 at home, and they're looking to keep it rolling these last couple home games. But for the Cyclones, can you continue to do this on a neutral site is the big question. And they're proving that they're good enough as these teams. But can they get to that next level? That's the further question, because there's been many years where Iowa State has been there, but can they get the job done? And this is one of those years where I think they can, and it's just going to come up to the staff and, if the players truly want it, because this team is special and one of the better Iowa State teams we've seen in this last decade.
Yeah, and I think, to your mention, taking it on the bigger scale, not just at home. Yeah, they're undefeated at home, but it's when they play those away games. We did see earlier in the year in the Las Vegas tournament, the Players Era tournament, it was all just neutral site, and they won pretty well. But once they got into conference play on the road, they lost to Cincinnati, TCU, and Kansas all on the road. That's where you got to question. I think Iowa State, their biggest test is going to be shown in these next 5 games, and 3 of them on the road. You have at BYU, at Houston, at Utah, a Utah stretch for Sunday to Tuesday, or they'll probably stay in Utah the entire time, and then you go at who could be still the best team in the country at Arizona. Yes, they took a loss and dropped down to 4 now, but there you have BYU and at Arizona, both games on the road. This is where you'll see how can Iowa State fare when it's not with Hilton Magic, because that is what these type of games is what it's going to be like in the tournament, the Big 12 tournament, and in the March Madness. So if they can win one of those games, even both, most likely, I doubt they'll win both just the way Iowa State has shown in previous years. But if they can pull out one of those ranked wins, I think that can really push them as they go on. And Houston, just to bring it back, they don't have that easy of a stretch either. They stay at home. They'll go back to Houston and take on Arizona, a top 5 matchup in that one, and then they go on the road at Kansas, and then they finish it out with Colorado, Baylor, Oklahoma State. This Big 12, we were mentioning it off air. This is a dog-eat-dog schedule at the end of this one. The framers of the schedule, they put the top teams and put them against each other in March. Maybe not the best if you want ranked stock, but right now you're getting some key matchups that are going to be crucial for March.
Well, yeah, and Johnny, you mentioned earlier how it just really is going to come down to who wants it more, and that's what really gives me peace of mind with this Iowa State team, because they just play so hard. You know, at the end of the game, Blake Buchanan gets fouled with, I believe it was like 4.8 seconds to go, sending him to the line, and it just was like a collective feeling of, oh no, because he's shooting 46%. He was 2 for 6 on the game coming into that shot, and then he misses the front end, and he's not a good free throw shooter, and that was the last guy you wanted. But then Taman Lipsey comes out of nowhere, and that's the ball to Joshua Jefferson, and just an incredible job, because going into that Blake Buchanan free throw, it felt like there were a lot of people thinking this could be another Arizona game from last year where, you know, Blake Buchanan could miss the free throw, and then Houston would have plenty of time. They would have about 5 seconds to get off a good look, and Taman Lipsey just comes out of nowhere, and we're really gonna miss him next year when he's gone, because he's really been what this team has been built around, and how this team has become so good.
So yeah, a lot of these teams have a lot to go, but we're running out of time. We got some big games, 2 ranked matchups tonight in college basketball. Arizona at home taking on the Cougars of BYU, top 25 matchup there. We don't talk about the SEC much, but Alabama taking on Arkansas in that one. This one could be one to watch out for that SEC tournament. Just how are the rankings going to be at Gonzaga? Watch out for them tonight. They take on San Francisco at San Francisco. Always a tough game when it's at San Francisco for the Zags. And then Kansas on the road at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has kind of been the bear trap for a lot of Big 12 teams this year. So that one will be one to watch out for. Any last thoughts, gentlemen?
I think this week, even though there aren't as many like super high profile games, probably the best one is this BYU Arizona game, and BYU without Richie Saunders for the rest of the year, so that really stinks. But there's gonna be some game every night that just sneaks up on you. It might even be like this Creighton UConn game. Creighton is not good, but you never know. They could pull off a upset victory. So it's going to be really fun to see which teams can really come out on top and pull off some big upsets.
Yeah, there's really so many games to look out for, and you're getting towards that really late February. Obviously, February is more of a shorter month, but we're already approaching February 20th on Friday, which is crazy to think about. And one game I'm looking for, obviously no high school hoops on February 20th, but St. Louis VCU. St. Louis just lost to Rhode Island at Rhode Island. They're looking to bounce back against the second team in the conference. I think this is a huge game for implications on. We've talked about it all semester on these lower teams and getting to the tournament. So many big games. Gonzaga, San Francisco tonight. Can Gonzaga continue to do it? But on a bigger scale, lower scale, there's amazing games to look out for, and this is where it gets fun.
We'll find out, and you'll all find out too. This Friday, we got the fourth quarter Friday show. I will not be in attendance for that one, but it will be Johnny Reynolds and Cole Sunderman as well. We have a basketball game tomorrow. Valley Boys take on the Roosevelt Riders, the Rough Riders in that one. That one will start at 7 o'clock this Thursday right here on 88.7 KWDM The Point, and then we'll talk about it again on Friday. But this Saturday, the Valley Girls will take on a sub-state semifinal game. We don't know who they'll play yet, but that one will also start at 7 o'clock on Saturday. A bunch of great hoops, a lot to keep watching out for, but thank you all for tuning in for about 20 minutes right here on 88.7 KWDN The Point for Before the Buzzer on a Wednesday. I'm Ian Nelson alongside Johnny Reynolds and Cole Sunderman. Thank you all for listening. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.